good to be with you this evening and to get this opportunity to connect. And really, where we're connecting is joining in our intention to encounter ourselves as spirit. We also encounter ourselves as human beings regularly throughout our days, and sometimes there's quite a bit of a dance between our exploration of our nature of ourself as awareness and our experience of being a human being. Recently, I gave a talk in our Sunday community practice program where I was really encouraging people to explore the aspect of who and what you are that is not defined by experience. Often, this is pointed to as awareness, the awareness that's looking through your eyes, but it can also be pointed to in many, many ways. And one way it can be pointed to is, as I had mentioned in this talk, a kind of deep dip into the direct experience of stillness. And then to have that sense of experiencing stillness shift into a sense of abiding in stillness and then abiding as stillness. And this is one pointer that I often like to use. It's a little bit different than sensing your nature as awareness. Sometimes the two come together, where you might get a sense of what's looking out your eyes and how that awareness stretches out into the world around you through your senses, through the sounds that are bubbling up in the environment around you, and the comings and goings in your vision, in your other senses. And there can be a way that as you get a sense of awareness, you might feel more like your awareness experiencing stillness, experiencing the quiet, and then abiding as that stillness. It's mostly about a kind of identity shift, a shift out of continually placing ourselves at the center of our narrative as a me that has its likes and dislikes and ups and downs of experience, and to get a sense of who and what you are that can't be boxed up by that sense of the me. And so tonight, I really want to talk to you about tending to the sense of your essence. And in particular, I'd like to speak to you about that in a way where you get a sense of tending to your essence in a very particular expression that I'll name as brightness, to tending to the brightness within. There's a story that I'm going to paraphrase that's more popular and famous in Zen Buddhist circles, where a student goes into the teacher and says something to the effect, "I've come upon the brightness of being." And the teacher says, "Oh, tell me, is that brightness like lamplight, moonlight, or starlight?" And the student, faced with this multiple choice question, just kind of goes on tilt and exits the room. They're caught in their mind's concept of this brightness and how it might fit into our categories of our known experience. And so the opportunity when we're exploring our essential brightness is not to view it so much as an object of perception that we sense through the senses in the way that we would, categorize moonlight or starlight or lamplight. It's a kind of exploration that requires us to drop out of the thinking mind that categorizes experience into the direct encounter with experience to such an extent that we're so intimate with our experience that our identity as the experiencer gives way to the experience itself and to direct perception and direct knowing in our very being. This is the key to pointers along the path of self-realization. They're really meant for us to dive into experience, whether it be through devotion or through a path of union, whether it be through inquiry and curiosity. It's a kind of gathering ourselves and our consciousness, our attention, and really offering it to certain qualities that are called out in these pointers. A pointer like stillness, a pointer like brightness, and to sense this quality that's associated with our essential being and to merge with that experience so completely that our identity falls away. Our identity as the meditator, as the experiencer, as the one with preferences. And as those identities begin to quiet, we can slip into a more subtle, very subtle, what we might call identity or perhaps just position of perceiving, which is the observer. And sometimes in that sense of observing the object of our experience, it might be where brightness or stillness registers in the body, for example. There's a little bit of distance, still a sense of the one who's observing as the subject and the object of perception in these examples, stillness or brightness. And there can be a way that that gap can close into an intimacy of experience that we often call a unity experience or a shift into a state of union in which the subject softens out of experience. It dissolves from its position, its fixed position as the observer, into the oneness of the moment as it's presenting. And so often in the thinking mind, as people hear pointers to oneness, they may think of something very far reaching and all encompassing. But often the doorway to that is through this one pointed attention, through devotion or through curiosity, through really giving our attention, which is our light of attention, into the depths of experience. Now throughout the centuries, the pointer has been to turn our gaze within, to look within and encounter God, the holy, the sacred, the great mystery, by turning our attention into a sense of deeper quiet. And one of the beauties of this kind of pointer is that often our attention is conditioned to track our experience. It's conditioned to track this sound or this movement or this task or whatever it might be. And so our attention's conditioned to move to the world, into the world of objects, and to engage the thinking mind in a way where even if it's not overtly cranking away in thought, somehow this nature of the mind is placing things in space, it's placing things along a timeline, it's categorizing and dividing up experience in a way where there's a lot of movement of attention. And so this opportunity to look within is to gather our attention and to encourage it to come to rest. And so some people in these circles, they're discovering the nature of self through an awareness that becomes wider. And instead of having that sense of identity of self kind of dissolve out of the center of experience, like I was describing the position of the observer yielding and giving way to the moment, there can be a way that awareness becomes more far reaching and more global, more spacious. And there's a way that by welcoming all movement and all of the displays of the moment, all sounds, all sights, all sensations, there's a way that the observer can also kind of stop trying to track it all and just let all of these experiences bubble up and register without a sense of the experiencer that's labeling and tracking and managing experience. So there's different ways to come about this, but the reason why I really love this pointer to look within is because it enables you, it enables me to find a kind of paradigm where the sense of identity has a place to lay its head. We can lay our head down in that stillness. We can invite our bodies to become more still in meditation. And so there can be this reference point or repatterning from all this tracking and managing of the various expressions of movement of experience that our senses take in. It can be a kind of repatterning to return to a reset, a kind of deep nourishment in this stillness where our consciousness can come to rest. And there's something really interesting that happens in relationship to brightness. The brightness within often becomes much brighter when we give the gift of our attention to stillness and to quiet, to rest, to settling. And to let that active attention that moves up and out come down into a kind of, I don't know, you could say cocooning or becoming more quiet. It's a kind of almost like a computer that idles down. And we can clear off the programs of activity of mind and give this whole system of our being, our mind, our bodies, our emotions, we can give that system a reset. And we can deeply nourish and dip into that quiet. And it's as though that quiet has this like elixir that washes away. It clears the computer of all the active programs and it can cleanse the mind. It can give release to the body. It can soothe the heart. And so for all throughout these centuries of humanity, there have been these pointers to give your burdens to God, to have faith in the will of this moment, you could say, although it's been phrased in other ways, to have faith in God's will, which is exactly what's happening in each moment. Not according to our lens of interpretation, but the actual isness that's unfolding in each moment. And so we have this opportunity as modern day practitioners that may be drawn to Christian languaging or languaging of other traditions that are more religious or not, but we have this opportunity to turn within and to turn the light of our attention to a kind of stillness where we not only cease referencing all these objects of perception, but we cease referencing the me narrative. And Adya talks about that as this U-turn. this U-turn of attention that's continually referring back to the sense of central self that only reifies this assumption of ego identity that's at the center of our experience, and that is continually needing to be protected or advocated for, and continually inserts the me narrative at the center of our lives. And there can be a time and place for that in human relating. Of course, people around us treat us like a me. We experience ourselves often like a me. But there's also a time to make an active decision. And meditation each day can be a time to do this, where we prioritize no longer insisting to put that sense of me identity at the center of experience, to go beyond that boxing up of self, to go beyond that, to sense exactly how this moment is unfolding, exactly who and what you are, that's beyond definitions of time, space, position, concretization of beliefs, thoughts, conclusions, and to look directly at experience. And so tonight, I invite you to, in particular, turn your attention into or toward a sense of brightness. Now, you know that sense of brightness you feel when you wake up in the morning? There's something that comes alight. If you've had a very refreshing sleep, it can be like the computer has cleared off all the programs and all the reference points, and you have this fresh platform for the day, this fresh sense of being. You might start to feel some of the parameters that you locate your identity through come back online. Oh, it's daylight. You start to reference the time of day. Or maybe it's still dark out. So you start to reference time. You might start to reference positionality and space. And you might start to reference an identity, perhaps the identity of the doer. Oh, I'm going to get up and do these things, etc., etc. And the conditioned notions of self may begin to come back online. But the quality of a deep sense of rest is that there's this spaciousness of being, and there's this brightness, there's this alertness when we're very rested, that turns on and functions as a shine through us, a kind of shine. And what I'm interested in as a teacher is for you to experience in a ever more knowing way this sense of shine within you. To create an atmosphere in our practices so that that shine can come forward, that it can shine through the layers of all the conditioning, that it can break through our notions of separate self. It can break through our preferences, our desires, our resistances in a way where it can come forward. It can come forward in your direct experience as a shine from within that shines outward. It can also come forward in your day-to-day living. And it can seep into illuminating your consciousness that observes your behaviors, the dance and flow of life from new perspectives. And that's my real keen interest, and my wish for you is for that brightness of consciousness to bring clarity and vision and perceptivity into your day-to-day experience, and to give you a sense that experience is something that you engage in, but that does not ultimately define you. And so meditation can be a time to rest out of a sense of separate identity and let that dunk in the reset waters of stillness, which all often has a kind of feeling of these darker waters that are more it's more of an interiorized consciousness. And for that refresh of consciousness that comes forward when we either come out of sleep or come out of meditation, to be able to shine more brightly and less impeded by the overlays of more automatic conditioning or triggers or um, heavier overlays of consciousness. So this brightness within is quite interesting to me. I could probably talk about it for days, and I will talk more about it in the March retreat that I'll be offering March 1st through the 3rd as one of the aspects of the retreat that I hope will help reboot you and strengthen your practice and your brightness of consciousness.